In the year 2020, I started a podcast about movies. Some episodes occasionally focused on other media as well. As I dealt with threatening interdimensional beings, I eventually met my other self from another universe where all the stuff I talked about got delayed. As it turns out, the stories as me and my guests described them were presented very differently in that other universe. So I continued podcasting these recaps, which apparently sound like improvised reviews, to entertain listeners of that other universe while they waited for the new release dates. Some episodes even focused on content of years past that did not come out in that other universe for whatever reason. The year is 2022. The podcast is now bi-weekly, unless stated otherwise. My name is Shinder, and you're listening to Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we usually recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe but came out on time in our universe. But occasionally, like on this episode, we talk about a video game that didn't come out in that other universe. And we've alluded to this before on the Celebration episode 2 years ago, Celebration Anaheim, which happened in 2020 for us over here. But first, introductions are in order. You may have heard him on other episodes of the show, including a few Star Wars related ones. It is Starrapter. How's it going?
Hey, Steven. Yeah, I'm back having fun just getting in the weeds with a video game, which is always fun to change the pace of the show around and throw a wrench in the equation and have some fun talking about my favorite pastime. So thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, and of course, the game we're talking about is related to The Mandalorian, the very popular Star Wars TV show. It's open world. Well, first of all, what do you think of the effort they went into with the title of this game?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many different things that go on with Lucasfilm with the titles. I mean, we just look at the Disney Plus series, and they are so inventive, right? It's like Andor, Obi-Wan, The Mandalorian, and at this point, they're not even trying to go outside. I mean, I get it, right? Like, you have the brand recognition that is behind The Mandalorian. Everybody talks about it with Baby Yoda, aka Grogu. So it's like I kind of understand. It's like, well, that they're probably looking at the marketing as like, what's the best way to get people to buy this game? It's not just some cool title that I would want. It's what everybody already knows, The Mandalorian. So, but yeah, maybe get a subtitle, at least The Mandalorian, the the frontier or something like that. I'm not sure, but I mean something a little bit that would still have the title, but have us a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, they do get lazy with the names, but not only that, but and I know people are like still calling the game The Mandalorian, but they actually dropped the word "the" from the title for this, so it's technically just called Mandalorian, which is still kind of silly. Like, I think they're trying to put an emphasis on the fact that, oh, he's alone. This is like before, like right before he meets Grogu, and it's like, okay, I don't know how dropping one word from the title makes him seem more alone, but I guess.
Yeah, it reminds me of with the DC universe with Suicide Squad and the Suicide
Yeah.
Squad, right?
Yeah, they went the opposite direction in this case.
Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is, and I'm looking forward to getting into the actual game because, as I always do with these Star Wars games, I just go in deep when it comes to them, and I take my time, and especially with a game like this, as you mentioned, an open world game, you automatically know you're putting in at least 50 to 100 hours. It's not Jedi Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor, where it's like, the 20-hour little campaign and you go through, but then there's replayability value, going back and trying all different difficulty. No, this is like Red Dead Redemption. This is like Witcher 3, right? You're going to be investing, Assassin's Creed, you're going to be investing a lot of time. So I tend to just slow things down a little bit. When I finish it, the main story, and move along from there, you know?
Yeah, this was developed by EA Vancouver, and when I was playing this, it kind of reminded me of Skyrim because I would often get distracted by some like side missions here and there. And I kept having to remind myself, oh shoot, I still need to do like the main story type thing, you know?
Yeah, for me, I have a very specific way with how I tackle open world games. I do a lot with Assassin's Creed, which is infamous for having almost too much stuff to do most of the time, in like Valhalla and Origins and all that. But or Odyssey more than Origins. But I will go in like one region. I'll stay in that region, and I will 100% all the like the little side quests while mixing in the main quests before I progress to the next one. And yeah, I know everybody's got a different way of how they tackle it. How did you go about doing it? Did you just kind of beeline through the story and going back and do the other things later, or did you just try to do a different approach, like more like me, or what was the way for you?
So this is the way that I did it. So I did like the first couple main story missions, you know, where you go after this bounty, and it's sort of the first time in the game that, and perhaps like one of the first times, if not the first time for Din, where he goes after a bounty and has to like freeze them, and it was kind of difficult. That one sort of took me like 7 hours to figure out. I'm kind of embarrassed to say, but whereas everyone else, like it was
Oh.
like it's not that difficult. But yeah, just capturing this Quarren criminal on, you know, on the oceanic world of Mon Cala. You know, his crime was that he's selling some like counterfeit figurines that like some
Hmm.
rival syndicate was trying to make bank off of. It was such an unusual like thing, but yeah, like wanted their competition out of the way, so you have to like get him and freeze him in carbonite. And yeah, so I did that mission, and then I did like 2 or 3 more of the main
Hmm.
ones, of the main quick ones. And then I, for like a week and a half, I got sidetracked by the side missions that aren't really important to the story. They're just like these random ass ones, like, oh, you can make some money by helping out this restaurant cook some chocolate or whatever. And just like weird things like that. I just got super
Hmm.
distracted, and then I was like, oh, okay, I need to buckle up and just ignore all the side missions for the rest of the time, and then I just progressed through the main story.
Yeah, and getting, starting to just kind of get into the weeds a little bit more here is just like, yeah, some of the side quests that you mentioned were just very just bland and seemed like, okay, it's just a means for me to get my experience points up real quick. Like, there's no deep detail in here. One of the things that I'm going to be continuing to compare, because it's hard to not compare, especially in the medium of video games. It's very easy to be like, I'm comparing this to this and this. A lot of this comparison is from Red Dead, Witcher 3. None of the side quests ever really felt like side quests in those games. Like, you'd go on legit odysseys in Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and go down this unbeaten path, find that there's like a quest line with these 3 witches, and they're doing these experiments and all this stuff, and it engages you, and you forget that, oh my gosh, this was a quest that maybe not even like 50% of people found, because it's off the whereas this, it's like, oh yeah, this guy's like, he wants me to go find yarn just like scattered around this general area, just like, oh yeah, I'm crafting this thing, I'm gonna need yarn, and a windstorm came through, and well, suffice to say, I gotta go find the yarn now for this lazy person. And it was like no story. I was like, oh, so that definitely rubbed me the wrong way. And like I was saying, for like the style, the way I was progressing through the game is I was having to beat my head against the wall trying to get through some of these really bland quests to like get through the main story. So yeah, that was my one gripe. Luckily, it's one of the very few gripes I have with the game. It's just it just feels like sometimes not every side quest like that, but it definitely felt more like the developer focused more on quantity than quality in terms of like the side quest.
Yeah, there was even one where it felt like Connect Star Wars, because There's like this disco club thing, and they don't play the Han Solo song, but they play like the music from that first like solo trailer where it's like do 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 do, you know, that cool sounding song. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, like as Din Djarin, you can do like dance moves there, and if you want, you could like beat someone up and it will start like a huge fight in the club. And it's kind of like GTA in that sense. Like if you start hitting someone in this game, like it'll start like a huge fight, and it's kind of hilarious. But I kept questioning whether Din would ever actually do these things. Like it felt kind of out of character to the point where I kept wondering to myself, okay, are these parts of the game canon or what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, what I do got to give props to EA Vancouver, just like Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. There's plenty, and I mean plenty of gameplay variety, at least. I mean, while the story might not be engaging for some of these little quests, I really did enjoy things like you said, going into the disco, finding out about that, going and racing swoop bikes around the deserts of Tatooine, going and just oddly enough, going into like Jabba's palace and going into like the same like little kitchen we see in Book of Boba Fett, and you're there with one of that crazy droid with like the Grievous arms, and you're helping him cooking something up for Bib Fortuna, who at this point is still alive. That definitely put a smile on my face. At least I am being engaged because nothing is feeling like I've done this 100 times.
Yeah, with Bib Fortuna, he actually hires Din to like take out some of the competition because Bib is very he's very on guard, and he's not as powerful as Jabba, so he knows people are gonna try to come and kill him, which Boba Fett eventually he does, but by that point he and Din are allies, so he does have Din to stop him. So at this point, Bib has Din going out to fight off some gangsters who are trying to basically dethrone Bib. So what did you think of this mission?
That was an awesome mission because when it comes to, I mean, this Star Wars game is made for me. I love all the underworld stuff, the bounty hunters, the criminals, the bosses, all those unsavory characters of Star Wars. So getting to hunt down Mercurial Swift, who is such a obscure Star Wars character, was from Chuck Wendig's The Aftermath trilogy. He's one of the bounty hunters, I believe, that might have even interacted with Dengar at some point. Just a guy from a novel
Yeah, he
showing up in
did.
this game. That made me perk up because I'm like, yeah, these guys at EA Vancouver, the story group, all the people involved, really mining the greater Star Wars galaxy for some really cool characters. And then just like never even seen that guy before, getting to see him on the screen for the first time. I was in. I was like, yeah, this is really cool. This is kind of what I was expecting the Book of Boba Fett to be about. It's like basically Bib gives you like this whole book. And he's like, here's all the people I want you to take down that are my competition. And you're basically, it's like one of your bigger like plot. It's like plot C of the entire game is he's one of your bigger dudes you're working for, and you're going around the galaxy literally crossing names off this list. And yeah, you got Mercurial Swift on there. What were some of the other bounty hunters that you might have been surprised to see that you had to take down?
Yeah, some of these I kind of recognize, but they were deep cuts. Like you could tell for some of these aliens that they took inspiration from like the arena scene in the Clone Wars micro series on Rat Attack when Count Dooku meets Ventress in that arena. And some of these were even inspired by early concept art for like what the episode 3 villain might be before they settled on Grievous. So you even have like these devilish looking bounty hunters, like devilish as George Lucas described them. And there were also a character who was human but wore armor similar to Dirge. So it kind of goes back to that
Ooh.
idea that they were considering for the Clone Wars season 1, where they were thinking of reimagining Dirge as a human, but before settling on Cad Bane, which I mean, thank goodness they settled on Cad Bane because like human version of Dirge sounded like a bad idea. But here in this game, like after we've gotten a real Dirge in the comics, although he hasn't like done anything since that one appearance, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But which is weird.
What is going on with that? I've been thinking about that like every month that comes into mind. Like, what is happening with this character?
Yeah, that was like a year and a half ago. Like you would think that they would do something with Dirge, this a huge villain in the original Clone Wars multimedia project, but he just appears in like one issue of Dr. Aphra and then is gone, just yeeted.
He surely isn't dead, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I wish he'd appeared in this game, but they probably want to like not use him in case they want to use him for live action or something. I don't know if that's the case, but I did have fun seeing this guy in Dirge looking armor. Although they never really answer whether he stole the armor or if he made it himself, like some sort of cosplayer. So and Lucasfilm's been very cagey about which answer it is, which is kind of frustrating, but you know, they don't want to nail these things down, I guess.
Yeah. So now that we're on the topic of bounty hunters and how that is like one of the bigger aspects of the game, obviously, I gotta give a shout out to the people over at EA Vancouver taking a card out of the deck of none other than Monolith created Battle for Middle Earth, not Battle for Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. They use this like kind of pseudo nemesis system, wherein and it's kind of like Assassin's Creed Valhalla too. But it's like you're going, and if you fail to kill one of the bounty hunters, the next thing you know, like they'll have like a taunting scene. Like if you don't really like die in this game, you kind of just like get knocked out for the most part or whatever. They actually like have a personality and they'll interact with you. So like these bounty hunters, if they take you down, they'll get up in your face and they'll put you in carbonite, and then you always find a way to get out of the carbonite. But then the next time you find them, they're even stronger than before, and you'll even notice like improvements in their armor or their weaponry as a reward for them having downed you. So it really added a lot more to a sort of it's a deeper layer of detail, and it feels a lot more interactive when you're like, oh my gosh, that guy downed me like a couple cycles ago or something, and it's like, oh, he's even tougher to take out now, but if I take him out now, then I get all his gear. So there was a really cool added element. I always liked that about the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War games, because they did they did a lot more to the game than just simply, oh, I'm dead. Let me get to a checkpoint and try again.
Yeah, and one of these bounty hunters has a jetpack, which Din is able to steal and use for some of the game, because it's like you can't have a Mandalorian game without a jetpack, right? But of course, he loses it by the end of this game, which explains why he doesn't have it in the show. But yeah, what'd you think of the use of the jetpack throughout the game and just the mechanics of it?
I will say I very much enjoyed the mechanics, and I go back to Anthem, which it makes perfect sense why they have such good jetpack combat, because EA back in the day made a failed Destiny clone called Anthem, and it revolved around kind of like a Iron Man sort of fantasy where you're in this different world and you have four different like suits of armor you can get in that you float and you fly around. It's a really awesome game, but it just never took off. It failed pretty bad at launch because of the story reasons and stuff like that, and end game and all that good stuff. But anyway, you can clearly like trace a line from the jetpack mechanics in Mandalorian to Anthem, and it's always neat when you get to see evolutions of things that have already been great, and they somehow improved it even more so. But it was just fantastic because it's like, oh yeah, you could certainly get around, like I mentioned before, on a swoop bike. But and as much as I like swoop bikes, like who really cares about swoop bikes when you could just get your jetpack and just fly around? Now granted, right, you can't fly for an eternal time. Like you do have like a sort of like meter that it runs out. I mean, yeah, because you're on jet fuel, so like it has to recharge, sort of thing. So it's good for getting around places really quick if you have to get up to something higher off the ground. But it's just a really fun way to navigate, and especially in the rainforest level. I think it's like I'm not sure of the name of the planet. It reminds me of Felucia a little bit because it's got like some very alien-esque plants and all, but it's very good for verticality, and this game has a lot of different areas from urban cities and whatnot to, like I just mentioned, like this cool rainforest planet where you're going to different levels in the treetops and different things. So it's a very good, efficient way of getting around, and it's not clunky at all. Sometimes you have systems like this in a game, and it feels like you're fighting with the controls for how to fly around, but the way they managed to keep the camera set back at a decent amount of space between you and third person behind you to control it, it worked out super well.
Yeah, for sure. And like they make the rainforest planet look distinct enough from other places like Felucia and Kashyyyk, and it just feels like its own environment. Star Wars planets with the one environment type of thing. Um, but speaking of mechanics, there's also this mechanic character who's kind of an ally throughout the game. She is an Abed Neto. Oh, that's her species, and she fixes stuff up for Din for a good chunk of the game. But then it turns out that she's like double crosses him, and she like shoves some death sticks into his armor and into his helmet. Like she doesn't remove the helmet, but manages to get it onto him to the point where he's able to inhale it, and so you get like that difficulty where you're Din and you're like sort of limping and stumbling and getting the side effects of that substance. It feels very much like Scarecrow toxin in the Arkham games, right?
Yeah, first off, I don't even know if I've ever seen a female Abednedo. We've been seeing plenty of those species pop up ever since The Force Awakens when they were first introduced. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting like the hard drugs of the death sticks involved, and we've seen recent things in some of the canon, like Shadow of the Sith, where we have what's the officer's name? Legion General Pride is apparently addicted to death sticks and Ewok coats of fur, apparently. So I was like,
Right.
wow, twice in 1 year, we got some like specific death stick kind of references. But I was like, damn, the way she just shoved them under the helmet. And then you're all acting like woozy and weird. It really reminded me a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2 when you get drunk and it just completely changes how people, like the characters, interact with you differently. You obviously have like messed up controls for like 2 or 3 minutes. So yeah, it's fun because it's those little moments which make these open world games so satisfying, is when you can really see like everybody interacting with you.
Yeah, she was very much trying to kill him off the sneaky way because she knows that it'll be tough to fight him while he's like sober and wearing the armor. So she very much wanted to like kill him and or perhaps even capture him and take him into like one of these rival gangsters. But if you play well enough, you manage to prevail, and Din is able to figure out the location of this other gangster that he has to go after. And so he goes to this world where the setting it's full of like giant they kind of look like giant pipes. You go through like these large tunnels and have to like fight off some shady characters in this like sewage system. And this kind of got me nostalgic for like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that, just fighting people through the sewers and whatnot.
Yeah, it definitely remind me a lot of another game that I think they draw some influence from, is that's Bounty Hunter. The good old gamer playing Jango Fett, and you're a lot on course on a lot of the levels, and it reminded me of that. It reminded me of Shadows of the Empire when you're in the under level of Coruscant, you have the Dianogas trying to get you. So yeah, it's a common stay in Star Wars video games is to have you going into the actual underbelly of some of these monoliths.
Yeah, like the creatures in this are terrifying. Like not just Dianogas, but also Rathtars. You know, we see those again.
Oh, yeah,
Like you
those
have to like,
freaking things.
yeah, you have to like really run from them, and you really feel like Indiana Jones trying to get
You,
a giant ball with.
yeah, yeah, dude, it's like, oh my gosh, playing this game, I had like an adrenaline rush because
Yeah,
just running away, I'm like, oh my gosh, like they just, yeah, it literally, like you said, it's funny because you can like zoom out the camera, and I was doing it like the good old like Ratchet and Clank or Crash Bandicoot style, where like you could see the object like behind you, and your character's like running toward the screen. So it's like, oh, I'm getting some nostalgia from the good old PlayStation 1 action adventure game days. You see
yeah,
this freaking rolling.
yeah. Like these things are really hard to kill, but it's kind of like when you are able to kill them, you're actually able to like cut off some of the tentacles because on the black market in this game, you can like sell them. Apparently, the Rathtar tentacles are a delicacy to some people, which is interesting to think about. It kind of reminds me of the Krayt Dragon scene in season 2 of The Mandalorian, which got me really hungry.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's that's something that it was fun to get through for sure.
There's that line from Din where when he sells the tentacles, he's like, I hope you people clean these off before feeding them to people because you know where they've been. So yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
very hesitant to try these given where they've been, where he finds them.
Yeah, yeah, in the Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga video game, there's a whole sequence on the Irvana or whatever it is called, Han and Chewie's hauler with the Rathars, and yeah, you
Right.
get to go. That's the most extended look we've ever had at those things up until now. Obviously, the comics had a couple of them with Maul hunting those things down. That was really cool in that miniseries, and they opened up to that him hunting the because those things, and even in the High Republic, those things are deadly as all heck. One of the Jedi characters might even be fatally wounded by one of those things. We have yet to really know for sure, but yeah, I mean, those aren't just like little. Those things are they definitely have been one of the most threatening creatures introduced in Star Wars in the last 10 years.
Yeah, and so this gangster that he finds at this like sewer place is very much the same species as Admiral Trent. You know, it's like a spider person, and you go through like this boss fight against this character, and it's like really intense, like more intense than I would ever imagine from fighting someone like Trent. You know?
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's a character design that we haven't seen a lot of. With that, I forget the exact species name. There's not many of them out there in the canon, but it was a thrill again. Like I said before, it's like yes, we got some different kind of characters. Deep cuts. We got a lot of deep cuts here.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Species is Harch.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, not a very exciting name. I'm actually legit surprised. But yeah, like all the different aliens that they include in this game, you know, they run the full gamut of what we've seen throughout the different eras, and it really makes it all feel like one world, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, looking at, and I just seen one of these guys in the Star Wars Adventures third issue with Poe and Finn. He had a Meeber Gascon character in Mandalorian.
Yeah.
It wasn't him per se, but it was one of his same species. And wow, to actually see the scale of how tiny those little guys are, you don't really know until you're playing the game. I mean, they are freaking miniature.
Yeah, there's a moment where one of these characters gets swallowed by a Trandoshan, but then does like the alien chest burster thing and just like kills a Trandoshan that way and gets out, which was really
Oh
surprising.
my gosh, that was one of the most gory things I've seen in Star Wars. Period. That
Yeah.
was like I did not think that they would go that far. And they just like, whoa, what are we playing the same game in the same Star Wars universe that we all know? Like this is I know they went far in the Clone Wars with the zombie episodes with the Geonosians, but this is like, whoa.
Yeah, I guess it helps that they color the blood so that it doesn't look like the red blood that we are used to seeing in real life. But yeah, they're
Yeah.
really pushing the boundaries with like the rating for this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything in life. Things have gotten a little bit less lenient over the years, right? You had, Jurassic Park, which I think was a rated PG-13, and if you had it anywhere else around that, it'd be rated R easily. Um, Same thing with like a movie I watched the other night. It's like Willow, it's 1988, but they deal with like babies being basically killed by these evil witch for not having for having this mark on their hand, and they would just have these women in these like little pens to try to see if they were going to be the evil bearers or not. It was like, what in the world? And then that movie was rated PG back then. It would definitely be rated PG-13 now for that thing specifically.
Yeah, PG-13 was very new at the time. I think Temple of Doom was like one of the movies that, like that and Gremlins, I think are cited as the ones that made people think, you know what, maybe we should add a PG-13 rating. But yeah, even then, there's still things from like the late 80s, early 90s that one would think would be PG-13 now. Um, it's just interesting how things evolve over time. But speaking of children, they do like sort of play into Din's eventual arc where we know him as a person who protects the child of like after the events of this, but there are little things that sort of foreshadow some of that. Like there's a moment where one of the people he has to kill, like one of the bounty hunters, it, like is like, please, I have kids, and like at first he's like not sure if he should like kill the bounty hunter or not. You take this bounty hunter hostage and basically go on a mission to find out if this bounty hunter has a family or not, and like once he's sure that he doesn't, that's when he like kills a bounty hunter. And it was kind of emotional, like that whole mission, something I really didn't expect to have to play.
Yeah, because I mean, this is kind of what I was talking about before. It's like a lot of the side quests were relatively unemotional, no attachment. But yeah, you had ones like that, which were like, whoa. I mean, it wasn't to the level of The Walking Dead season one with Clementine and the parental figure there, but it was still like, oh yeah, Star Wars can definitely hit you in the feels from time to time, and to do it in a video game is even a bigger applause from me. So that was definitely one of the standout moments for sure.
Yeah, there's also moments where Din still suffers from like flashbacks to when the super battle droids attacked his home as a kid. And one of these missions involves him like going up against a gangster who has some reactivated super battle droids. And so he has to deal with those. And it's like, it really catches him off guard. It's really trippy. And just, yeah, what'd you think of that sequence?
Well, it's very very interesting because going into Jedi Survivor, which is coming out in a couple months, we know that there's going to be reprogrammed B1 battle droids in that. So it seems like lately on the gaming front, Lucasfilm has gone all in on bringing back some of those icons of the prequels. Which, hey, as somebody that grew up with the prequels, I'm all for it. This is fantastic nostalgia here. But it was cool to be able to see from the perspective of a gunslinger, to be able to just hit these guys from afar, get into cover, and just do damage, pretty good damage. But yeah, again, like there's so much character variety in this. I mean, at one point I was killing Chadrafans, those little vampire type bat creatures.
Yeah.
Again, another small little creature taking those little things out, but then you have some of the bigger do what I forget how to pronounce their names. Duwatins or Dowotins, like the ninth sister, like those big hulking dudes. So I was happy that they just didn't cut and paste like generic body types and just replace heads. Like for instance, they could have a Duros have the same body as a Solstin, have the same body as a Faline. Like they're all the same body type. They just change out the heads. No, they actually went through the effort of doing different body types, things that had like the spider creature, the Harsk or whatever you're talking about before. So it was enough to keep me on my toes as far as like, oh, that's that creature or that's that species. And it's neat to see in an open world capacity the amount of it just makes you further immersed in the story in the game.
Yeah, and we've talked about how jetpacks are usually cooler than swoop bikes, but there was a sequence on Munilinst where there are some reactivated Hailfire droids, the
Oh,
ones with wheels in Attack of the Clones. It's like we haven't. I'm surprised we didn't see those really in the Clone Wars 3D TV show. You would think,
yeah.
but yeah, like here you have Din on a swoop bike trying to like evade them, and you have to like try to destroy them like as you go, and it's just yeah, it's really intense.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the adrenaline rush feeling, this game at its core, they get the vibe correct as far as the tone. And when you watch The Mandalorian, right, this isn't Andor. I love Andor, I really do. But Andor and Mandalorian are completely separate. Like Mandalorian is just like 30, 40-minute episodes, but there's always a lot of action, always a lot of fast-paced stuff, and that's what this game is about. It's like you go from one experience to the other. You're always on your toes. You're always either on a vehicle, you're crouched behind cover, firing. There's not a lot of dialogue, as you can imagine. This is not Mass Effect. This is not Dragon Age. You're not, or KOTOR even. You're not gonna have these long drawn out conversations. It's just like, yes, no. You get the mission and you go to the next thing. But there is a little bit of, as you said, foreshadowing to what we know as Din Djarin, but we know that there's like a 5-year gap in between Return of the Jedi and Mandalorian, and this is the best place for this game to take place because you're getting to see, like you said, like with the flashbacks of the super battle droids and all that. So it does show us where he is at now, a ruthless bounty hunter that just doesn't have a lot of sympathy for anybody. But we see, just like actually Andor, right? We get to see shades of redemption, shades of, oh, this guy can change, maybe. So I appreciated that at least.
Yeah, it definitely shows what Din has become as a bounty hunter, like becoming so cynical and jaded after everything he's been through. And it gives us a better understanding of where he is when we see him at the beginning of the TV show. And speaking of Andor, I love that they incorporated some of the locations we saw in that show, like the Miami looking planet with the weird music that I really liked. And yeah, just stuff like that where they're able to incorporate some of the more recently added worlds to the Star Wars lore. It really shows that they're at least communicating about some of this stuff. In our universe, Battlefront 2 is still gets updates now and then. There's the One Way Out level that got added as a
Ah,
DLC, as a nice Prison Break level. It's just so fun.
oh my gosh. The other universes haven't gotten updates past the Clone Wars or past Scarif, I think was the last map. Man, I love this universe because it has gotten everything from Rise of Skywalker to Mandalorian. We have that awesome level on Navarro. Yeah, fantastic. Even just something as simple as the one way out on forget the planet name. I think it's also something with an N from Andor.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad
Ah,
at remembering the planet names. I just watched.
Narcana, right? Narcana 5 or something like that. I think.
Okay, yeah, that does sound familiar. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, like all these different rival gangsters that Din Djarin has to take out. It really it fills out the world and shows what the underworld situation is like in that gap between Return of a Jedi and Mandalorian. Well, closer to Mandalorian, but you still get the after effects of like that opening act of Return of a Jedi with Jabba's death, which always felt kind of disjointed from the rest of that film, but it's cool that we see the effects of that so it feels more important in these other things.
Oh yeah, yeah. It definitely shook up the criminal underworld as we've seen in Book of Boba Fett. Addresses that head on, and
Yeah.
you even get to see the Black Sun, which I was happy about. Like, yeah, you got everybody's favorite green scaled weirdo creep. Zizor is back, and I don't like Zizor for the matter of, oh, this guy did horrible things. I
Right.
just like his aesthetic. He like just like he looks cool. And they at least like didn't make him as much of a creep in his in his version of him. He's just a no nonsense mafia boss guy, you know. So it's like, all right, I can get down with this version. That is weird, but
Yeah, he's a formidable foe for a huge chunk of this game, but like for me, I just couldn't separate the Legends version, so it was very satisfying when as Din Djarin, I was able to like shoot him to death at the end, as you can imagine. Um, but but yeah, like he does a lot of damage against some of Bib Fortuna's forces. Like Bib hires some like top guns to like fly these like starships to go up against like these rival syndicates. And it's like, man, how much money did Jabba leave behind that Bib Fortuna is able to use?
Oh yeah, we didn't even get on the topic of just the interstellar travel in this game is what we've been waiting for. At least I can speak for. I don't want to speak for all of the Star Wars community here, but we've all been wanting a game like this ever since the newer generation of the consoles have come around. It's like, why haven't we gotten a Star Wars game where you could fly from a planet, land, get out, go to another planet and land, whatever. It's like this is what we've been waiting for, and it took us this long because the hardware on these the consoles and computers had to catch up to be able to have this kind of level of fidelity in graphics and mechanics, but also being able to be something that doesn't take you 20 minutes to load each planet either. So I love the fact that you don't just get stuck with the Razor Crest and you get to try different ships. Yeah, by the end of the game you'll have the Razor Crest, but you could go ahead, you could try Z-95 Headhunters. You could fly in a Lambda class shuttle for all you care. It goes from anything as small as like a one cockpit fighter to a reasonable size like cargo ship. I was sporting my good old YT 2400, aka like Dash Rendar's infamous Outrider ship. I was always I fly one of those in Lego Star Wars. I'm flying one around in this game. So and it's fun because like you said, you don't just use those to travel. There is like a whole another element of the game where you're like actually doing combat against the syndicates. So it's really neat seeing again with the Black Sun, Shadows of the Empire, like I forget exactly what those ships were called, but they have a really unique design where it's like they look like an X fighter. Like they have like these, oh, they're called I think a basilisk fighter, I believe. Check it out. They're from the Legends, but those things are really cool. But yeah, and then you even have like you venture out to this other area and there's like a reactivated droid armada, and you see like the droid control ship. You see all the droid starfighters with the hyena bombers and the
Yeah,
tri fighters
and the vulture droids. Yeah, Din's just getting like PTSD all over again, like fighting these things.
yes, that's what I was so again, just gotta give credit where credit due. That this game took forever to get to us, but it paid off because they did not leave any stone unturned when it comes to these criminal syndicates and whatnot. Was the Imperials in this game at all, or were they? I don't know if these games are so big that I don't know if I've seen everything just yet. But
there is like a little side quest where there are a few like random Imperials with like rundown stormtrooper armor, and they're like at some isolated outpost, and so the job they have for Din is to like go hunt for them and bring them some meat so that they can survive even further. And so that's basically what the extension that I recall, unless I'm like missing something.
Yeah, because I know they didn't want to like have too much Imperial activity because that might like retcon a little bit too much of like what Mandalorian season 1 was about. So they can't have too much of that in the game, but maybe we'll get like a sequel game at some point that'll have more of that element.
Come to think of it, that mission is kind of like in Rebels when they meet up with the old clones and have to go hunting a beast for them. I just realized that.
Oh my god.
But yeah, I also love how in this game, another thing that makes it similar to Red Dead Redemption, in that game, I would go play poker, and I don't know how to play poker in real life. So in Red Dead Redemption, when I played poker, I'd be surprised whenever I won, like just from doing random stuff. And it happened pretty often, which was weird. And so, again, like in this game, you get to play stuff like Sabacc. And again, I don't know how to play, but somehow I'm able to win money really randomly by playing that here.
Yeah, I remember doing the same thing in Knights of the Republic, but it was with the predecessor game called Pazak, and yeah, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was just like hitting buttons, and it's like, oh, I win, no, I win. I mean, you just have as great a chance almost doing that anyway, because like all these games are games of chance, so like if you press the right button the right amount of times, you're gonna win. Whether or not you can increase your odds by knowing how to play the game is probably a better idea, but again, keep going back to this. Open world games live and die by the vast variety of content they can do at will. So getting a chance to go to like one of these outer rim, because this entire game, by the way, is set in the outer rim. So getting to go to like one of these like little outer rim cantinas and you just have a bunch of different aliens. It feels so Star Wars to go in there and just being able to gamble your money away. That's part of the escapism, I guess, if you will. It's like, yeah, it's what the criminals, that's what the bounty hunters generally do. They're always looking out for more cash and, well, they're going to make a quick buck doing some gambling on a table out there by one of the cantinas. But.
Yeah, and another random side quest is where one of these people in one of these clubs is like using some dating app, and it's called something weird, something Star Warsy, like Bacta or something. And basically, what the mission is, like, this person doesn't know like how to find a good date, and so you get hired to advise them on like when to swipe left and swipe right, and basically make sure that their date goes successfully and that nobody tries to kill them. It was just so bizarre. It's just such a random thing.
Yeah, I definitely didn't like that quest very much. I was like, how is this Star Wars? What is happening? Like this is when I did the quest, I was like, I could see it now. We're gonna see Mandalorian trending on Twitter. And there's gonna be about 1,000 people just having screen footage of this and being, is this Star Wars? This isn't Star Wars. And
yeah,
it's like
this isn't my Star Wars.
Yeah, part of me says that, but then I'm like, dude, just relax. Like it's just a tiny fragment of the game. Somebody threw it in there. Just have fun with the fans. It's like, yeah, it's not as bad as like the water bottle thing that I seen where it was like, I don't know why like this Easter egg exists, but there's just like a Dasani water bottle just like chilling like on top of the bar, one of the bars. I think it's like it's actually like near or is it actually, it might have been Navarro.
Like, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a brief moment where if you look at the water bottle long enough, you'll see Blue Jeans guy pick it up. So I guess that's just like a little Easter egg for the fans of
Yeah,
the show.
it brought me back to when everybody was going crazy about like the coffee cup that was like left on the
Yeah.
set of Game of Thrones. I was like, yep, that's what's funny with this game. It's like there's another game I play, World of Warcraft, and they always like purposely put in references for like their quest titles and like just the different like little storylines that are obviously nods to like pop culture things. So it's cool to see like this game also doing that, but also going outside of Star Wars in some circumstances to also make nods at things.
Yeah. So by the end of this game, once Bib Fortuna's competition is like off the board for the time being, he talks to Din and is like, I could hire you full time. Why don't you be my right hand man? And Din like amazingly feels disgusted by the idea of just working with him consistently, and he's like, I've made all the money I need for now. And he just basically leaves it at that and just leaves the palace.
Like I mean the game, and when you first start, like Bib is like normal sized, but then by the time you leave him, it's just like this like just slob guy that's just sitting on a throne. Like, dude, you got to get out and get your hands dirty or something, because you just can't be sitting on this thing all day. Dude, like a few of your like quests were to go around and just gather food, local food from Maz Espa.
Yeah, basically. So is there anything else you want to bring up before we go into final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was interesting that I don't know how this was. Again, this was one of my gripes as well about the game. So to get health, you actually had to find chocolate.
Yeah.
For first of all, I didn't really know that chocolate was a thing in canon up until this game. So I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Yeah, I knew it was a thing in Legends, and I thought I vaguely remembered it being mentioned in something canon, but I'd have to double check later.
Yeah, I know there was a whole thing with like the hot chocolate or something with Timothy Zahn and Thrawn
Yeah.
trilogy, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, they're really going on a limb here. So Mandalorian has to go around, and to replenish his health, he has to have chocolate. That's like, oh man, I don't know how I feel about this. That was a weird direction. We've been talking about other games in the last year or so on this podcast, and why do these developers put in these weird like health regeneration mechanic gimmicks like this? I feel like we were talking something similar about this not too recently.
It's even weirder because we constantly see Bib Fortuna eating a lot of chocolate, and it's like that's surely bad for his health. So like, why is it a health thing for Mando in this? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah. It's like, oh man, oh man. And the other thing I'll say is just a general sense of the chaos in this game, both in combat and story. Like you get that we talked about this a little bit already, just the whole emphasis on, yeah, Jabba's dead. There is chaos in the underworld. These guys are fighting for control. These guys are fighting for control. I was hoping to see Crimson Dawn in there, but I guess since the comics aren't done yet, that they didn't want to go ahead and spoil if they live or not. So we didn't get to see anything from Crimson Dawn and Kira. And then even this general sense of the combat, like sometimes you get into firefights and you have pikes trying to hunt you down. At the same time, you have the Black Sun. At the same time, you got the droid Gatra. So there's all these different factions, and then what's really neat is you can like wander the streets and you could actually see them naturally fighting each other in the streets. So, this is a great time of Star Wars storytelling because Mando picks up 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So we have plenty of time in this 5 year gap to really flesh out just what happens in a power vacuum of this magnitude,
Yeah. All right, so I guess we can go into final thoughts and score out of 10 and of measurements. So what are yours for this Mandalorian video game?
I'm gonna give this 9 bounty pucks out of 10 bounty pucks. I thought that this game was fantastic. EA Vancouver, I don't know if they've really developed the game before this. We do know that they had a lot of hot shots and veterans from previous Star Wars games and previous EA run games in general. You could definitely see the love for the franchise and all the deep cuts. You could see the talent in just the combat. It reminded me a little bit of Gears of War with the cover mechanics, but also a little bit of Anthem mixed in with the jetpack antics there as well. The space combat was fantastic. Definitely had that kind of like more arcadey feel that Battlefront 2 had in the combat, but it also gave me a little bit of the Witcher 3 vibes, a little bit of Red Dead Redemption vibes when it came to certain quests. Most of the quests were kind of throwaway quests, the side quests, but they did have ones that did add a little bit. And I will say, like I said, off the top before, this definitely paves the way for Din to have a little bit more character development later on in his life. Although we do see him getting quite the reputation as a skilled and dependable bounty hunter. So yeah, this is a game that I think all fans are going to want to try, going to want to play. And as I said, it definitely will take you quite a bit to play through because there's about 10 different planets to explore, and these things are fully explorable. So awesome game. I'm happy that we can add this to one of the best Star Wars games of all time, up there with Jedi Fallen Order and Knights of the Republic, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm also gonna give it 9 out of 10 chocolates. They did very well with the open world aspect, but like we've said, there were some silly moments and some very frustrating gameplay moments for me anyway. But for the most part, it was an all-around thrill, and I'm glad this game exists. I would hate to be in the universe where it doesn't. But yeah, I think 9 out of 10 is what I feel good with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess that'll do it. Thanks for being on again, Starrapter. Where can people find your stuff?
All right, Steven. Yeah, thanks for having me on once again. As far as my content, you can find it on YouTube, youtube.com/Starrapter, where I talk constantly about Star Wars, any of the new shows that are airing. I like to talk about those. I also have my own podcast for Star Wars content called Outer Rim Transmission. You've been a guest on there. We talk about just the latest Star Wars news and reviews on anything as well that has come out recently. As far as social media, besides YouTube, if you consider that social media, I'm mainly active on Twitter. Twitter, just look up Starrapter and you'll find me talking about video games, Star Wars, Marvel, any of the sci-fi, pop culture stuff that we're all talking about on there. So yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll splice in my plugs after I record them later for the edit, like I've been doing recently.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now for the plugs, you can email this podcast at delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on chocolate. I found out online that they were first mentioned in canon in the Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad novel. It's been years since I've heard that, so there you go. You can also follow me at Steven Shinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook. You can also find me on Yesshift, a podcast/vlog I do with my dad, where we talk about the band Yes and have talked to some of their members and people who've worked with some of their members. Recently did a few interviews, one with Aaron and Joe Emerson, another with Chris Welch, and then one with singer-songwriter Claire Hamill. And we got more stuff planned for the rest of the year and more stuff coming in the new year as well. You can also go to stevenshinder.com for info on my novel Lemons on My Grain. And like I've said before, the next book, Trespassing Through Vestiges, will be out sometime in the new year. So keep an eye out for news on that. Yeah, follow me on Letterboxd. My handle is Rotten Tormato, and follow me on Goodreads, I guess. I'll put the links in the show notes like I usually do. And yeah, so now to end the episode.
But yeah, that'll do it. And next episode will be on the Star Wars Rogue Squadron movie coming out really soon. So without further delay, have a good day.